Now you might be thinking, why is someone making a transfer video about Everton? The club has no money, the stadium is not going to be built on time, the board is in complete disarray, owner Farhad Mashiri might be selling the club, and the Premier League is investigating Everton for alleged financial breaches. If you put all that together, surely Everton aren't going to spend any money this summer. But you're wrong, you're definitely wrong, and Everton will be spending money this summer. And that's because the drop-off from the Premier League to the Championship financially is too much for Everton to bear. With the salaries the players are on, with the running costs of the club around Everton, Everton cannot afford to go down to the Championship, and therefore they will be spending money to make sure that that doesn't happen. And if you think to yourself, oh, do you know what? Sean Dyche did a cracking job towards the end of the season from when he came in January, he can definitely keep the club up. Well, let me tell you, he had a points per game ratio of 1.17, which if you average that out over the course of 38 games of a season, he would have got you 44 points. Now, if you actually compare that to Frank Lampard from when he came in from January till the end of that season, he got a points per game ratio of 1.11, which would have got you 42 points, only 2 points less than Sean Dyche, who's done a fantastic job since he's come in. Therefore, that goes to show Everton absolutely must invest into this playing squad to ensure that Premier League survival is guaranteed. And I think it's actually going to be quite an interesting video, and I think you should stick around to the end because there's a lot of creative ways that Everton can get money from this playing squad, even though it looks very bare, and reinvest it very wisely. In my opinion, Everton can afford to sell 7 first-team players this summer in order to boost their transfer spending, and the first one can be Moise Kean, who reportedly back in March, Juventus agreed to sign back from Everton for a reported £25 million fee, which will be massive in terms of boosting Everton transfer spending. And the second player is Andre Gomes, who spent the entirety of the season on loan at Liga and signed Lille, where he amassed 26 appearances, scoring 3 goals and getting 2 assists. And after a terrible time on Merseyside with many an injury after signing from Barcelona for a reported £30 million, I definitely think the 29-year-old, 30 at the end of the month, with 1 year left on his deal, it's definitely now the time for Everton to cash in on him. And I think transfer market reports that he's roughly worth around £12 million, and I think that's a bit steep. I think maybe realistically more looking towards £8.5 million, especially for 1 year left on his contract. Everton don't want him. He's on high wages. It's better just to get rid of him, I think. Next, you got Jean-Philippe Gbamin, who is another player like Andre Gomes, who's had a terrible time with injuries at Everton. He's now playing out in Turkey, where he's playing CDM. However, he's also been playing right back and actually mainly centre back as well, which has actually done well for Trabzonspor. So, with 1 year left on his deal and his agent coming out and confirming that he's going to leave the club this summer, I think transfer market has him down as £4 million, and honestly, I think Everton should take that if they get it. And then next, you got the enigma that is Dele Alli. He's gone out to Besiktas to get more game time after failing to do so at Everton. He's played 13 times for them in total, scoring a total of 2 goals. And it's one where you're going to look back in time and say what a fall from grace he's had, what a player he used to be. But I don't think Sean Dyche can do anything to get the best out of him. I think with 1 year left on his deal, Everton should be looking to either loan him out, release him from his contract, do whatever, but just make sure you don't pay his high wages. Try and offload him on loan, try and get another club to pay for him, and then release him at the end of his contract next summer, because I don't think you're going to get any money for him at all. And then in the current playing squad, you've got Michael Keane, who I think needs to leave after 12 appearances last season. However, getting an impressive 1 goal and 2 assists, and one of those assists was an assist for Yerry Mina away to Wolves that really saved him a point and really helped him out in the penultimate game of the season. However, I think it's now time to go. Again, he came in for a lot of money, and it hasn't quite worked out for him. I think transfer market has him down as reportedly being around £10 million. I think that's a bit steep. I don't think any Premier League side's going to buy him for that much. Maybe you can hope for a bid from Saudi Arabia, but I think something more realistic is about $7.5 million considering his wages as well. And his fellow centre-back partner, who I think should be following out the door, is Mason Holgate. The 27-year-old only made 8 appearances last season, no goals, no assists, and frankly another one who has had his progress really stumbled by injuries, who really at one point looked really promising under Carlo Ancelotti when he was at the club. But I think now is the time for him to move on, and honestly I don't think I see any Premier League side paying money for him. I think maybe a newly promoted side at a stretch, but not a huge amount. Transfer market has him down as £10 million, but I think he's probably destined for the Championship, and maybe £5 million at best, really. And then finally, you all knew he was going to be on the sell list, was Neil Maupay, who after joining from Brighton has only scored 1 goal in his entire time after 27 appearances. However, in his defence, most of them have been from the bench, but you would expect a lot more from him. When Everton needed to sign a striker and they went out and signed a striker who doesn't score many goals, it always seemed like a match that wasn't meant to be. and it turned out exactly that. And ever since Sean Dyche has come in, he seemed to not really prefer him at all. He's played the likes of Gray up top, Iwobi up top, McNeil, Ellis Sims, and really it's one where he doesn't fit the style of play anymore either. So I think there's definitely a championship side or maybe a League One side that could definitely take Maupay and see if they could do any better with him. I think maybe not a striker, maybe he's more of a deeper, maybe a number 10, but that's maybe at a stretch. I think considering he's young enough, he's shown he can score goals at Brighton, not many, but he can. I think you should be able to recoup about £10 million from him, and Transfer Market seems to agree with me. So in total, I'm having that down to £60 million, most of that thanks to Moise Kean. And you know what, if you think that some of these players you can get as much for them as I've proposed, maybe not 60 million total, maybe 55, maybe 50, but either way, I'm still going to be well within the budget, so there's nothing to worry about. So I'm going to say £60 million so far I've recouped. And then now here we have the depth chart, which shows all the players that I've said are leaving the club and where that leaves Everton. I think the likes of Hasan Begovic has left, so João Virginia comes in. I think Seamus Coleman and Tom Davies have been offered new contracts, so I'm expecting them to sign. I hear Everton have taken the option to extend Abdoulaye Doucouré's contract for another year. So this is how I expect the team to be after we've sold all the players that we have. And yeah, as you can see, that Mykolenko is the only left back, so therefore we need more competition there, and maybe someone even an upgrade on him. We definitely need centre backs. I brought in Branthwaite back from PSV on loan. I think he is definitely going to be a talent and a future Everton star. However, he needs game time in the Premier League to build up his experience, because he is really quite inexperienced at the moment. Another James Tarkowski is kind of like the out-and-out Premier League proven solid player for Everton at the moment, especially with Yeremina leaving and Connor Cody going back on. Everton deciding not to take up the option to sign him. I think midfield you're okay. I do think you need a few more goals from midfield as well, though. So I think you need someone a bit more box-to-box in the final third. I think you need someone for the right-hand side as well, because although Alex Iwobi is there at the moment, Gray could play there as well. However, I feel Iwobi's maybe kind of more suited for the middle of the pitch, and that you need someone a bit faster, a bit trickier, who can pitch him with a few more goals, because he's definitely one who can score goals, but he needs someone else as well. And then obviously the main area of concern for Everton, they need a backup striker to Dominic Calvert-Lewin, because he cannot stay fit whatsoever. I think he made appearances in 8 games last season for Everton, and maybe if he was fit, Everton would be much higher up in the table, but we never know, I suppose. And you cannot rely on DCL to stay fit. Therefore, you need someone else who can be the backup striker when he is fit, but when he's not fit, to take up his role and be the number 9 for Everton, who can hold up the ball, unlike Maupay, who just is not his game. And Ellis Sims, he's a bit inexperienced, can't quite do it just yet, which is why I put him in yellow. I've been really harsh on some of the players here. Maybe I haven't been harsh enough with the likes of Garner and Onana, who, is going to come good, but maybe I haven't been too harsh. But 5 players I think Everton need to sign this summer. And I think the transfer strategy for Everton definitely has to be focused on players who can make an impact in the first team now, but also who are young enough you could potentially sell in a few years' time and make a profit to then reinvest that back into the playing squad later on. We've seen it with the likes of Brighton, Brentford, how well those clubs have been ran. And I think therefore the first one I'm going to make is left back Aaron Martin, who's a 26-year-old Spanish left back from Mainz. He's available on a free transfer after the expiry of his contract, and last season he made 28 appearances for Mainz, who finished 9th in the Bundesliga, getting 5 goals and 3 assists. And I think this is actually a perfect signing for Everton, because if you look at Mykolenko, who last year got 0 goals and 0 assists playing a left back, and I think the way the modern fullback plays, you need to be getting goals and assists or contributing a little bit towards the forward play. And with Martin being kind of the opposite, whose strength is actually his ball control and his direct free kicks and crossing into the box, he's the perfect alternative to Mykolenko. And then Sean Dyche can choose who to play depending on what game and which game suits which player best. And I think this is actually how Everton have to go, because if you go on the other side of the pitch to the right back area, Patterson is really good at attacking, even though we haven't quite seen it with Everton, but we know has it from his time in Scotland and at Rangers. And you've got Seamus Coleman, who's a bit more defensive, can't really go forward anymore. Having that more attack and more defensive options at fullback is definitely one way to go for Everton, especially because they need an upgrade on Mykolenko. And I think a perfect example of this is you've got Luke Shaw and Malacia, Man United. You definitely expected Luke Shaw to fall over and Malacia to take up a spot at left back. But because of the competition, Luke Shaw's now stepped up, and you hope that Mikel can hopefully do the same thing and become a more attacking fullback who we think he has the natural raw ability and the athleticism to run up and down that pitch, but this final product just hasn't been there. So bringing some competition left back, I definitely think will help him out. And Aaron Martin, who maybe should be aiming for a bit higher than Everton, he could probably go for a team who's in the Conference League or Europa League. But I think Everton can pay high wages, and he's getting on free transfer, so I definitely think they can entice him to Merseyside. And then at centre back, I was a bit lost on who to go for centre back options here, because I definitely think that Conor Coady is a more than reasonable centre-back who Everton should definitely have re-signed. But I can understand why they didn't, because of the fact that the option to sign him for £4 million was so close after the end of the season, and without knowing fully the financial situation going on into the window, that Everton couldn't afford to sign him there and then. There may be a little something where with 1 year left on his contract, he apparently loved playing for the club, he had his kids in the Everton shirts, that maybe Everton will go back to Wolves and say, we'll take him back for that. Or maybe even less after towards the end of the window if Wolves get a bit more desperate to sell Coady. I think he's one option. I think another option, and this is a bit ballsy, is Harry Maguire, who, is taking a lot of stick at Man United for not being able to play the high line, not being quick enough, maybe not being good enough on the ball. But I think for a team like Everton, where similar to Leicester when he played, he excelled in that time. Playing with a very deep back line, having to clear balls from the box, I think he's actually a perfect Everton signing. Now, 1 year left on this deal, Man United are probably going to try and sell him. However, again, similar to Wolves with Conor Coady, if, it gets towards the end of the transfer window, maybe they get a bit itchy, maybe they're just like, he's not going to start for us, so maybe we should just loan him out, and then, you can try and sign him for free next summer. But I don't think it's likely, but I definitely think you can have a conversation with that and see how the player feels as well, because you've seen Conor Coady get in the England squad playing for Everton, so therefore so can Harry Maguire, and if he's playing week in week out, then why not? I think you definitely got some options in the Championship as well. You've got the likes of Dale Fry and Middlesbrough, the 25-year-old 6'3" centre-back, made 30 appearances last year, and he's kind of out of favour initially with Steve Wilder, but then Michael Carrick came into the side in the winter, and then he kind of made a renaissance back into the team. He's also got 1 year left on his contract. He's former England international at every youth stage. And, for a while people were talking about him as being like England's next big centre-back. And hasn't quite materialised for him. He's maybe stayed in Middlesbrough a bit too long. And I think transfer market says you get him for $4 million. I think he's maybe more around $6-7 million. Is he good enough? I'm not quite sure. He feels kind of like the David Moyes signing of when you signed a Jagielka or something like that. But maybe he's not enticing enough for Everton fans to say, look at the player we've got. So a lot of waffling, but the player I'm going to go for is Mohamed Salisu from Southampton. And I know Everton fans might not be happy with this because he's just been relegated with Southampton. You might be saying we don't need to sign a player from a relegated team. However, I look at James Tarkowski, who played every single minute for Everton last season in the league. And if you think about it like that, I think if you take one of the best players from a Southampton team who did struggle defensively, admittedly, I know, but he was actually really good for him. He's got 1 year left on this deal. He's left-footed, which does pose a bit of an issue in the long term, because I think you got to want to promote Branthwaite, who's also left-footed. They're both going to play on the left-sided side of the defence. That's going to be an issue long term. But I think you can definitely sign him for about, transfer market reckons £15 million. I think maybe closer to £20 million. He is a bit error-prone, but I think sometimes having the leadership of Tarkowski to his left, Coleman to his right, and is really good at his positioning and his tackling. So I think this will be an upgrade on Godfrey, on Michael Keane, on anyone else at the club apart from Tarkowski. So, and he's Premier League proven. So I'm going to say Mohamed Salisu, £20 million. You might not like it, but I think it's definitely worth it. And now into midfield, who I think player is really quite exciting. And again, this might be a bit punchy, a bit like Aaron Martin, but I think Everton can definitely guard and sign him. And that's Enzo Lefebvre from Lorient. The 23-year-old Frenchman can play as a 6, 8 and a 10. Has even played on the right of midfield. He's predominantly an attacking midfielder and played 35 games last season for Lorient, scoring 5 goals and getting 5 assists. Again, like I said, it is punchy. And I know that he's been linked with a lot of top sides, Champions League sides, Europa League sides. But I think, when I was thinking about it, I was thinking about the fact that Andre Onana decided to join Everton. And I thought to myself, there are definitely clubs who had more pull. But he's going to play at Everton. He's going to play week in, week out. And There might be a bit of an issue about is he physical enough for Sean Dyche's side. He's 5'7", 170 centimeters. However, he does make 1 interception per game and 3.1 tackles per game as well. So he's willing to stick himself about. He is a bit of a playmaker. He could potentially, play in the side alongside Gay, Onana, Decore. If one of them is out of form, he can play and be more attacking. I definitely think he's the midfield profile kind of player you want. And I think there are others, but I don't think they're going to be as good as Enzo Lefebvre. And I think transfer market has him down as 13 million. Again, I think he's more 20 million, even though he's got a year left on his deal. He's 23. He's very young. He's being touted as a future French star, and there's a lot of teams linked with him. Punchy, yes, but these are the kind of players Everton you try and get to elevate them higher up in the table. So I'm going to go Enzo Lefebvre. Now in that right midfield, right winger slot, I've actually got a player on loan, and I think this is one of the most important things for Everton. I've already said we need to use the free agent market, but Everton also need to use the loan market and get some players for a really good deal. And you saw that with Connor Cody last year, who did really well for the club. And now for the right wing spot, I think you're going to be underspending a lot of money to get a real quality player. So that's why I think getting a player on loan from a top 6 side is definitely going to be an idea. And the player I've gone for is Amad Diallo. Now, I'm quite annoyed that this video is going to be coming out a few days, maybe a week later than there actually have been links to the player. And I think this is a player who, it just makes sense for Everton. I mean, he played 37 games for Sunderland on loan from Man United in the Championship last year. 13 goals, 3 assists, and I think he tore that league apart. And he was also up for Young Player of the Year. Unfortunately, lost to Alex Scott, who I think did deserve it, but he was up there. He was definitely in contention. And from the perspective of Man United, they might be thinking to themselves, no, we want to keep Amad Diallo. We want him to play next season. But I think when you got the likes of Anthony, Rashford, Sancho, and Garnacho ahead of him all at this moment in time, we've all been doing it in the league and in the Europa League. I think he is, at the moment, 5th choice behind all of them. And I think at a loan spell at a Premier League side, where he goes out and he proves he's the main man, scores some goals, gets some assists. I think if he gets 10 to 15 goals and assists in 38 games for Everton, or a league lower down, then I think that shows to Man United that, he's a quality player and he needs to be in the squad right now. And suddenly he goes from a fringe player to a first-team player. And if he goes to Everton, he's going to be starting week in, week out on that right-hand side. And, you got Alex Iwobi there, who I think maybe his best position is in the middle. You got Dwight McNeil, who's preferred on the left. Gray, who prefers playing on the left. So I think this is one where, it actually works out for Man United, Everton, and Erik Ten Hag than the player. He's not that far away from Man United. So, Ten Hag can drive down the motorway anytime he wants and go see him play live if he decides he needs to. And I think this would be a quality signing. You would be fighting for this for a signature from a lot of other clubs. I think a lot of clubs are looking at maybe getting him on loan because of how well he did last year. But again, Everton need to sign players who are going to improve the quality of that first team, not just going to be squad players here and there. They need to improve, and I think Amad Diallo on loan, I don't think it's that unrealistic. And the last player, and the player that Everton desperately need the most, is the striker, because Dominic Calvert-Lewin cannot stay fit for the entirety of the season. He's proven that for the last few years. If he would, that'd be amazing, but I think they need a backup striker to him, and when Dominic Calvert-Lewin isn't fit, they need someone who can actually take up the mantle as well. And I think the perfect player is Victor Gyökeres. And now I know everyone's been talking about him. They've been linked with him to Portugal, links to Germany, many teams in the Premier League. But I think the reason why he should go to Everton of all teams is because of the fact that he's going to be guaranteed game times. Like I said, Dominic Calvert-Lewin cannot stay fit, and he's going to be playing week in, week out. And even if he is fit, he can play on the left, on the right, just in behind. He can play alongside him in the front too. I think it's perfect. The 25-year-old Swedish international scored in 46 games last season, 21 goals and 10 assists, which is incredible for a Coventry side which almost got promoted. And, they just missed out. So it's Coventry's loss, maybe Everton's gain, Transfer market has him down as £11 million. I don't see that at all. I think 15 million would be a good deal for Everton. 25 would be a good deal for Coventry. And I actually think somewhere in the middle, £20 million is a good deal for both teams. And he's a proven goal scorer in English football. What more do you want? He maybe could get you 10 to 12 goals in the Premier League next season. Perfectly fine. It's more than Everton have from Dwight McNeil, who was the top scorer last season. I think in together, those 5 signings could really propel Everton, like I said, not just improve the squad, improve the first team and take them forward. And so so be it if Sean Dyche is going to get 44 points on if he carries on his points per game ratio on average. But wouldn't you like to be much further ahead and be clear of the relegation zone completely, just be mid-table, no dramas, keep a manager in for the entirety of the season rather than sack him again in January and then having to deal with players who aren't his? I think these 5 players could really make a difference. Some of them, obviously, like I've said multiple times, are a bit punchy, but I definitely think, they're not completely unrealistic. I've seen way more unrealistic transfers happen. I'm sure you have as well. And this is how Everton could potentially look next season if they make those signings. And obviously you got Aaron Martin here competing with Mikalenko. You got Salisu with Brandway competing, and then so that means Tarkovsky moves to the right hand side of the defence. I've also chucked in Conor Cody because I think for £4 million, and if Everton can negotiate that a bit lower with 1 year left of his contract, the player clearly wants to stay at Everton. I think you may as well do the deal, even despite his age being 29. I think Enzo Lefebvre as well, competing with maybe Decore here, maybe you can play on the right. I think Amad Diallo on loan for a season would be fantastic for them. I think Victor Gyökeres up front to back up or to play alongside Dominic Calvert-Lewin could be really good as well. So I said 5, but actually I'm going to go with 6 players. I'm going to chuck in Conor Cody in there as well. And I think this is an Everton side who then go from 36 points. Everyone says 40 points and you're safe. 36, you're risking it. You're taking a chance. I think this side could maybe end up with mid 40s, and really, or maybe high 40s even, and then avoid the relegation zone completely. Make sure they're safe, and you know what? I think that's what Everton fans want at this moment in time. Maybe I'm wrong, but I just think a season with no dramas, no manager sackings, just smooth sailing. Get yourself eventually into that new stadium, and look forward to hopefully what the future can hold.